If you haven't watched my videos before, I just want you to know that this is a different one for me. I have always been very open about my faith. I've always been, everybody who knows me knows that I am a Christian. Everyone who's come in contact with my books or my social media will have seen that I am open about acknowledging Jesus Christ as my Savior. I have no qualms about recognizing that God is important to me and that I attempt to live my life in a way that acknowledges Him and what I believe He's achieved, not only in my life, but for everybody. But even within that, and I would say this to any of you who don't know God or don't want to know God, we're all human. We all get it wrong sometimes. We're all weak in different ways. We all make mistakes. We all don't know things. Even those of you who do share my faith and have known me for a long time, you would know that until a very small number of months ago, if you asked me about healing, about God doing miracles in this day and time, I had very low expectations of what God would do. I had I believed that people often sought healing from God or believed God wanted to heal them because basically it stinks to be either sick or hurting all the time. And, well, wouldn't it be great if God would be this wizard who would wave his magic wand and we would all feel better? I had seen in my own life that difficulty and hardship and pressing through things can add really great things to us. I used to compare it to physical exercise. Like, we all see the value of pushing ourselves, pushing our bodies, because we know that when we do that, our bodies get stronger. And I think, and I know, and it's true, that our souls are the same. When we allow ourselves to be pushed, when we take risks and step out and push ourselves into difficult situations, we grow, we get stronger. We get stronger as people, we get stronger emotionally, and we get stronger spiritually when we do that with God. And so I thought for a very, very long time that people who had a focus on God as a healer were basically just trying to get Him to make their lives easier. I really believed that. And it's not that I never asked God for healing. I did. And I prayed with other people who asked God for healing, but it seemed like it was so rare. Anything that I would say was in any way verifiable or believable. There were so many scammers and people claiming God was healing, but there was never any evidence of it. It was just either emotional or whatever. I had a lot of skepticism. That's what I'm saying. I didn't believe that God made a habit of healing people. And I also didn't think that we necessarily needed healing, because I thought that God brought sometimes good things into our lives through the hardships that we suffered, or through being in relationships with people who were in hardship. 8 years ago, roughly, I began to experience chronic pain. And it was initially, it was so bad that I was basically an invalid for 3 months. This was back in 2011, I believe. It was really bad. I couldn't wear clothing that restricted my waist. At first, they didn't know what was going on. All we knew was that I had pain that was in my lower abdomen and lower back, and that it referred down my leg into my thigh. It seemed to be linked to a back pain that I had been having off and on since 2000 no, it was about 2000, I think, 99 or 2000. And that, they believed, was linked to an injury I had had in the early 90s falling off a horse. That injury had given me, like, my lower back would often hurt when I laid down. So I had pillows that I would put under my knees sometimes, or different things that I would do to combat that. It didn't affect my life until the end of the 90s, early 2000s, but it was always come and go. I never had pain for more than a few weeks or months, and then it would go away completely, and I wouldn't think about it again until it cropped up again. Well, in 2011, after a couple different surgeries and after having a baby, and just different physical things that had happened, and it turned out that I had very significant scar tissue all the way through. All of my internal organs were stuck together in my lower abdomen. And the belief was, when this pain began, there were two causes. One was a hormonal problem that was causing my ovaries to, they were, I think she said, 6 or 7 times their normal size. And because everything was stuck together with scar tissue, these organs were expanding and creating pain because all the tissues were pulling. But then on top of that, it created this nerve pain that started in my sort of hip lower back and referred down my thigh. They got the hormonal stuff under control, so the lower abdomen pain pretty much went away. But this referred pain down my leg stuck around. And it didn't seem to really matter what we did. It would never go away completely. And it was the kind of pain that started very low level early in the day. This was 8 years ago. Very low level. When I got up, I was functioning normally. But as the day went on, it would get worse and worse. And over the course of years, it came to impact my life so much that I hardly ever would have evening activities planned, because usually my leg was bad enough by sort of dinner time that I just wanted to be sitting down. But when there was, events or things that I really wanted to do that would come up in the evening, I would spend like the whole day, I would plan the day before, I would spend the whole day doing nothing, so that, because the less movement I did, the less time I had on my feet, then the less pain I would have. But I never, for the last 5 or 6 years at least, maybe 7, I do not remember a moment of my life that didn't have some kind of pain. Sometimes it was very low level, especially early in the day, but I was never pain-free. Back in 2012, I think it was, they started me on Tramadol. And in 2013, when I came to America, they eventually, after several months here, put me on, you would call it Vicodin, I call it hydrocodone, which is a combination of an opioid and Americans call it Tylenol, New Zealanders call it paracetamol. And even though I was on a low dose, and I only took that in the second half of the day, I would take it at lunchtime and then again in the evenings to help me sleep. It was really a management tool. It was never enough to remove my pain, but it would reduce it dramatically. And I would use medication, and like I say, I would manage my day around activity. So if I knew that there was something I had to do that would have me on my feet for a long time, for example, if I had to go to the grocery store and do a big shop, I would plan other days around that. Or I would go in the morning when my pain was less and plan to do nothing in the afternoon so that I could be sitting down until dinner, because dinner time was always a struggle because I was on my feet to cook and clean up and stuff like that. And so by the time dinner was over and I was cleaned up, I was just waiting to get off my feet. I was always really uncomfortable at that time of day. and it would make me irritable and grumpy. You can ask my husband and son. It would make my temper short. It would make me not enjoy things. I often said no, especially to any kind of physical activity. If I went on vacation, I didn't go for walks. I didn't go for bike rides. I didn't, even like going shopping or something like that. I would have to manage when we were going to do that. I would always be looking for seats to sit down if I had to wait for somebody. Without realizing, it kind of creeps up on you. Pain comes to control your life. And it got to the point where it would make me angry, and it would make me hate myself, because it was a weakness. And then on top of that, because I don't like talking about it, I didn't like telling people that I had this sort of limitation on my life. I would try to manage things so that it wouldn't really, like, people would say, do you want to come out to lunch? I'd be like, sure. And I wouldn't tell them. If we were standing in line for 15 minutes and I was getting really sore, I just wouldn't tell them. I just wouldn't say anything. I would just bite it and deal with it, and then be really upset later because it kind of ruined things for me a lot. And like I say, it would make it lowered my mood, and it made me more irritable. It's very hard when you are literally hurting 24/7. There are moments you just want to scream. Like you just want away from it. And it doesn't even have to be that the pain is so dramatic. Because when the pain's really dramatic, medical people will intervene. It's actually that sort of low to mid-level pain that is not bad enough to stop you moving, but is bad enough to suck the joy out of everything. In my experience, that pain was the worst pain, because I could still justify, I need to be a wife, and I need to be a mother, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I need to do those things. But I couldn't enjoy anything. That was what it came down to. It was very difficult to enjoy anything, and everything had to be managed in a way that let me spend as little time as possible on my feet. Avoid lifting things, avoid twisting. Any sort of physical activity would make it worse. So you imagine, after 8 years of that, I have literally not exercised until recently in 8 years. And so your body, on top of having already nerve issues, these are medically diagnosed, by the way. I had there's a nerve specialist in my town who does what they call nerve conduction testing, where they can actually figure out which nerves are affected. Basically they're confirming that you are actually in pain, that you're not just making it up. And they can identify, where the source of the pain is and what it's causing and all of that sort of thing. So I had a nerve conduction test, I think 3 or 4 years ago, that confirmed all of it, and it was worsening. By that time, it had traveled, so it was referring all the way down to my foot. And that happened over the course of years. I went from, first it was just in my thigh, and then it was sort of around the back of my thigh, and then it started going around my knee, and then it started going down these lines down my leg, and eventually it got to the point where it was in the ball of my foot and in my toes. So I had lines of pain. I had layers of pain, because the pain came from different sources. And when it's nerve pain, it's not like you have this spot that hurts. A nerve is like a line through your body, and it's connecting things. So points would hurt, lines would hurt, whole limbs would hurt. And it's not like you can just rub this spot and it'll feel better, or lift it up and it'll get better. It's unavoidable. You can't get away from it. And it is debilitating mentally. I don't know how to say it better. It comes to rule your life. You get to the point where every decision that you make, literally every decision, I need a paper clip, and the paper clips are upstairs. What else am I going to get while I'm up there so I don't have to go up those stairs again within the next hour or two? What else am I going to need? Am I going out later? Do I need to get my jacket or my shoes? Every little thing is affected by this. It really controls your life, controls how you think. People say, do you want to come do this? Now, it might be an activity that I would normally really enjoy, but it does not sound attractive at all. I'm in a lot of pain and I don't want to have to talk about it. So no, you guys go ahead, you go do that. I'm going to stay here. People would judge me. I got people who thought I was lazy or who thought I was selfish, that I just didn't want to do stuff with them, or that I just wanted everybody to work around my schedule. And so I would have to explain to people when it affected decisions. I'm not just like, oh no, I can't do that because it's at 7:00 in the evening. Like, there's actually a reason for this. But because I made such a point of managing my life around it, people generally only saw me in the first half of the day when I was usually functioning fairly well. And so they'd be like, what? Like, they didn't see me struggle. Because I don't limp often because there's no point in limping. The pain has to be really, really bad for me to be limping, because there's no point. Limping won't relieve anything. I don't have an injury. I had a nerve that was being impinged, that was overstimulated. And it was causing pain in tendons and muscles around it. All of the muscles in that leg, they call it chronic myofascial pain. Literally the fibers on the outside of the muscles start to overstimulate. So they start contracting. It causes muscle spasms, it causes cramps and different things. And that sends, I don't know whether the nerves send signals to the muscles or the muscles send signals to the nerves or both, but they end up exacerbating each other. So basically, very, very slowly, and over the course of 8 years, this just got very slowly worse all the time. And I got to the point where I had asked God to heal it. My husband had asked God to heal it. People had prayed for me at various times. But I thought, because it had been so long, and there were, I could see things that came out of this that were positive. My son grew up effectively with me having this issue. He was, I think, three or four when it started. And so it's made him much more sensitive and empathetic, because he is aware that I had limitations and that things would bother me. And so he would offer to do things for me, or he would be conscious of other people when they said they were in pain. I saw that it bred an empathy in him that was really valuable. It bred sensitivity in my husband. He unfortunately, which was so difficult for me, he had to take over things that I didn't feel like he should have to do. I work from home. I am an author. I can manage my own schedule most of the time. I did the housework, and it got to the point about 3 or 4 years ago where vacuuming in particular, but even sweeping, was just really caused me a lot of pain. And so my husband started doing that, despite the fact that he worked full-time and did a bunch of other things because I couldn't do them. Every couple weeks, he would be cleaning my house for me. Just everything. All I want to do is paint the picture to you that this controlled my life and limited me in ways that most people didn't see, but that were very dramatic for me and very noticeable for the people close to me. Yes, they had done tests and they had proven that this nerve was having a problem, but it was all theory as to why. All of the reasons, it wasn't like I had an injury. I had several surgeries. There was scar tissue problems, and so on and so forth. But there wasn't a moment where something got injured and then wouldn't heal right. It was a slow sort of degradation of my body. And so there was conjecture, depending on which doctor you were talking to, about why this was happening and what was causing it. And because it's a nerve, they're like, we can't cure this. We can't go in and do surgery and fix it. All we can try and do is manage it, and get you to where you're comfortable and functioning. But really and I did occupational therapy, and I did a whole bunch of other things. I did physical therapy. I did, and medication and exercises. I did water therapy, a whole bunch of stuff. Nothing would ever really fix it. Medication soothed it, and rest soothed it. The more time I spent off my feet, the better I felt physically, but then I would feel worse mentally. And so a couple years ago was the first time God kind of raised to me in reading and studying about other issues, that for some people, some of the physical afflictions had a spiritual root, that Christ at times was dealing with a demonic or an enemy force, and that physical affliction left when that was dealt with. And I know you don't want to hear that. Bear with me. So a couple years back, I thought, I wonder if that's what's going on for me. And for a day or two, I was praying about it and just doing some stuff, but it didn't really get better. It kind of would go away and come back and go away and come back. And I gave up. I went, well, that's obviously not the problem. And I left it. But that had always been in the back of my mind. And every so often, somebody would say to me, what are you going to be like when you're 60? Or I would see somebody who was older and how their bodies, how they were struggling. And I would think, my gosh, how is this going to go for me? And I would get very fearful. And I kept turning to God with that. And the reassurance that God gave me was that there was more to this story. And I always had in the back of my mind this sense that this would not be forever. But I thought medically we would figure out what was going on and we would be able to improve it. Or I would find some exercise or I thought there would be some kind of intervention, some kind of medical intervention that would end up having a positive result. And so I was just kind of waiting for that. Waiting and always looking into different things to see if we could figure out what that would be. But I did get very fearful, and I did at times get really weighed down with, am I going to be useless in 20 years? Am I going to be literally somebody who just sits in bed all the time? And if people want to see me, they have to come to me. And that made me really unhappy when I would think that way. So about 4 or 5 months ago, I started really genuinely studying the effects. So here's the thing. If you don't share my faith, or even if you do, this may not be a super comfortable perspective for you. It's not something that I talk about very often because I know that it sounds difficult. I don't want you to think that I am the kind of person who jumps to these kinds of conclusions. I've literally studied this for years. I've seen evidence of it in my life and in others, and I've listened to others who went ahead of me in this way and affirm, without me giving them information, very similar experiences and understandings to what I had. So let me put it to you this way. If God is real, if the God of the Bible is true, actually exists, actually created the world, let's just go with the hypothetical. If that's true, not only did he create the physical world that we see and touch and deal with, he knows how life is supposed to be because he created it. And he also knows anything that goes on in the supernatural. Now, I understand that many people don't believe there is a supernatural at all. Bear with me. We're sticking with the hypothetical here. If a supernatural God exists, and he created the world, and he created life, and he created you and me. He understands this world and this life better than we do. He has the bigger view. He understands what causes anything. If the Bible is true, he understands everything. Nothing escapes him. And if the Bible is true, his intention for us, for you and for me, is good. He himself became human to pay the price. The Bible says he was wounded for our sins. By his punishment, we are healed. God applied justice, but he paid the price himself. It was as if that man stood in the court and said, yes, I raped her, or yes, I hurt her. I wish I hadn't. If I could do it again, I wouldn't. Please let me go. And the judge said, no, you have to go to jail. And somebody else stepped in and said, I will go to jail for him. That's what Jesus Christ did. He took the punishment that I was supposed to have that would have kept me from paradise, from perfection, from life as it is supposed to be. Life with God is supposed to be. That's what drives us. That's why we're always looking for something. That's why there's always this little ache, this little thing that's never satisfied in us, because something in us knows we are supposed to live a perfect life, and we are supposed to live that perfect life in relationship with God. There is something in us that can only be satisfied by him. And I didn't know that for the longest time. Even after I met God, I did not appreciate that there was a part of me that needed him, didn't just need forgiveness, didn't just need the removal of sin, didn't just need to go to heaven later when I physically died. There was a part of me that needed to be in a relationship with God, because only in a relationship with God can I experience perfection in this world. He is perfect. I am not. So being in relationship with him means being loved perfectly, which is what my heart yearns for, aches for it. And people aren't capable of it. Even the best of us let each other down. So what does all of this have to do with me and my pain? A few months ago, God started nudging me and showing me things and bringing me in contact with stories from other Christians and other people to show me that his intention for me and for my body was much, much better than I thought. I thought that it was good for me to endure or go through the struggle because I would grow from that. And I thought that his plan would be eventually we would find some kind of solution or help, at least, so that I could function a little better. God started making it clear to me that he had a much, much better plan than that. And I did not expect that. I want to be really clear. I didn't go looking for that. I wasn't trying to find people who would tell me that God wanted to heal me. I wasn't trying to find information in the Bible about people being healed. I thought I had walked that walk already. I thought I'd studied that already and understood. And I thought people just had the wrong perspective on it. I thought we were just immature and didn't want to deal with pain, and so we just wanted God to fix everything for us. I was wrong. I was actually looking for answers to help people who were dealing with the consequences of following the things of this world that were not brought here by God, but were brought here by the enemy. That people were so completely convinced that there was no enemy that he was having a heyday. So I was looking to help other people, and it was not in the arena of physical healing at all. But I was studying this, and somebody cropped up through the course. It was a series of studies that a man had done like 30 years ago. And unbeknownst to me, although he started with an understanding of the spiritual problems, this course that he did ended in an understanding of God's desire and heart to heal us. And it was like this curtain parted, and I sat there and I was listening. This one session that this guy did, it was about 2 hours long, and I watched it over the course of 2 days. And over the first half, which I had watched on a Sunday evening, it was more focused on sort of the spiritual battle and the difficulty of living in this world, and how to understand the difference between what comes from God and what he wouldn't choose for us, but has come into the world through our desire and our will, because God gives us free will. He lets us choose. So I was coming to understand that. And then this man started to talk about how God never intends or never desires the brokenness, but he will use it. He will absolutely use it. He has the power and the knowledge and the understanding how to use it in our lives so that ultimately good comes out of it, which was the way I had seen healing before. Yes, we may have difficulties, but it's okay, because good things will come out of it in the long run. But he started to say that there were certain physical afflictions, certain physical things that we dealt with in our lives, and that their observation had been many of these things were spiritually rooted rather than physical. In other words, if you got rid of the spiritual problem, the physical would be fixed. God would fix it. And I was stunned, because here's the thing about having a relationship with God. We have the Spirit of God, the invisible power, force, personality of God within us. He actually promises to live inside us and instruct us and teach us and guide us. It's like literally having your best friend accessible 24/7. That's what it's like. And the Holy Spirit, which is his name, is talking to, while this man is teaching this, I'm questioning, that can't be right. It can't be right that this thing that's so physical has a spiritual source. And God is affirming for me that what this man is saying is true. And that it has been my unwillingness to look at that and to, sort of really get into that with God and dig deep on it, that has kept me from understanding this for years. This was the road he started to walk down with me 2 years ago, and I turned my back on it. I said, oh, it didn't work in the first, few hours, so it must not be true. One of the things that this man said was that they had seen people, the issue was spiritual. They had dealt with the spiritual root of it, but people hadn't really believed, because it got better right away, but then they hadn't really believed that God did it. And so they went back to old things, and the spiritual problem just came back, and so the issue came back as well. And what he said was, if you have or are, feeling the urging of God that you will be healed or that you are being healed, you have to stay connected with God about it. Don't let Satan convince you that God wants you stuck in this. If God does not want you stuck in this, God will not leave you stuck in it. And so I was just flabbergasted because I was having the affirmation from the Holy Spirit that this was true and that God was sitting there ready and willing to heal me, but that there might be a process to it, and that if it was a spiritual root, the only way to solve that was to connect with God spiritually, to seek answers spiritually rather than physically, to stop going to the doctors and to stop taking the medication, but to actually let God fix it and stay in that place with Him where I'm trusting Him to do it. And so, long story shorter, this was a Monday morning. My husband was out of the house. My son was downstairs. He did not know that this was going on. And I listened to what this man was telling these people, and I prayed. And I was so certain. I just knew. Because this was God talking. It wasn't me. I hadn't gone looking for it. I didn't even really believe it. And then there's this thing that happens when you're in a relationship with God and somebody is speaking the truth. There's this thing inside you that just resonates with it and says, yes, yes, yes. It's like having a person standing next to you going, yes, true, yes, yes. And it's the Holy Spirit identifying truth. And so I said, okay, God, if that's what you're doing, let's do this. And I felt on my leg, first one spot next to my knee, then one in the middle of my thigh, and then one at the top of my thigh. One by one, these 3 spots flared up, this heated nerve pain. Flared and went away. Then the next one flared and went away. And then the next one flared and went away. And then there was no nerve pain. It was gone. And I'm crying by this, and this took seconds, like 3 seconds. And I'm sitting here, hands over my mouth, sobbing. And all I can say to God is, I don't believe you. You're going to have to keep doing this. I don't believe you. I don't believe this is real. I'm going to struggle to believe this is real. I don't believe you. I mean, I'm just being honest with him. I hadn't seen it coming. I hadn't been looking for it. The fact that he was doing it right there and I could feel it happening, I was terrified to believe that and then be let down. Mine flooded with all these years of pain, flooded with a couple years ago when I thought maybe this was the way it went and it didn't work and I was back. Anyway, the short story is, in this video, when this guy was praying for this person, and then I started to pray, I paused the video. So he had just prayed for this man. I paused the video. I prayed. God healed me. I felt him heal me. And then I'm in pieces, like literally in pieces. Like, I can't believe this is happening. And so it takes me a good 15 or 20 minutes to kind of get myself together. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm still scared of this. I'm still scared this is going to come back. And I've still got like muscles that are sore. Like the nerve pain's gone. The nerve pain used to run in lines. It was this deep ache and it kind of radiated and it throbbed. And that was gone. But there were still these muscles that I'd had problems, muscle spasms, muscle cramps, muscle knots, all this sort of stuff. Some of those were still hurting. And so I was like, oh, is it not really gone? You know, is this just like a psychological thing? And so I think he said at the beginning of this thing, some people, there's a process to go through with God to sort of get to the end of the healing, so to speak. And he's saying, you know, if you are being healed or you think you've been healed, he's like, stay plugged in with God. Let God lead you through a process if that's what it's going to take. So I thought, okay, I have to listen to the rest of this message, what this guy's saying, because I'm terrified that this nerve pain is going to come back. And I turned on the video, and I kid you not, the next words out of this man's mouth, he was talking to somebody that you can't see on camera. And he says, "Have you been medically diagnosed?" And the woman said, "Yes." And he said, "What have you got?" And she said, "I have severe myofascial pain," which was what was left in my leg after the nerve pain was gone. So I start crying again. And I watch it. He brings this woman up and he talks to her and he prays with her, and I pray along. And then he says to her, and she hasn't said anything, he says to her, "You need to say you will never drink alcohol again because you're using it to deal with your pain." And she, sort of affirmed, "Yeah, I won't, I give up alcohol," or whatever. And it hit me. I had been on pain medication at that point for 6 or 7 years. 7 years. Serious pain medication, not high doses, but still very serious medications. And I sat there and I went, okay. So, and this was, again, the Holy Spirit's confirmation was, if I really am going to stay plugged into God, if I really am going to trust that God did this, not me and not some doctor and not whatever, then I have to remove the safety net, which is my pain medication. I have to be willing to say, okay, nerve pain's gone, still got some muscles cramping and spasming and stuff here, but God, I'm going to keep talking to you about it. I'm going to ask you to remove that as well. And I'm going to stop taking the medication that the doctors have given me to deal with this. I never took my pain medication again after that morning. It took about 2 to 3 weeks. The nerve pain has never come back, by the way. I have not had this. This happened about 2 months ago. It's never come back. But the muscle pain took about 2 or 3 weeks to stop. It was a whole process. It faded over time. A month ago, I started karate, which is insane. It's just insane. I've had no exercise, literally no exercise for 8 years. And the thing that happens when God does something, you have knowledge that you can't have any other way. I just knew that my body was only like the remaining sort of muscular twitches and spasms and lower back, like my lower back would ache. Even though it wasn't the nerve pain, it was still irritating. It definitely was not, it wasn't debilitating anymore, nothing like before, but it was still, it was uncomfortable. And God, I just knew God was telling me that stuff, your body's just really weak because it hasn't done anything for so long. If you get strong, that will go away. So a month, 5 weeks ago or so, I started karate. I'm only going once or twice a week. But already, it's rare. I have whole hours and hours of days with no pain at all. None. I have not experienced that in 8 years. I've never had the nerve pain come back in 2 months. I'm doing karate, and sometimes like after I do karate, like the muscles in that leg will be like all like unhappy. I'm definitely getting sore muscles from like working out because I haven't done it in so long. But I'm trotting up and down the stairs. I'm doing stuff I swept the floor the other day. Like, my life is changing. Like, God performed a miracle for me. And I know that there are people who will listen to that and say, oh, it was all psychological. No, I had tests. They shot things through my body, currents, and had measuring machinery and computers and stuff. And they told me what was wrong and that I had an impinged nerve and I had this and I had that. This is documented. And that pain and that problem has kept me enslaved for 8 years. And I am not enslaved anymore. I am free. Now, I still have some work to do. I have a very weak, soft body. And it's going to take months, probably a couple years, for that body to get strong again. But I know, I just know that I don't have to worry about that nerve pain coming back. I don't have, the muscles are already getting better, and I'm still desperately unfit. My body is still desperately weak. But already, even with the little bit that I have done, just once or twice a week for a month, already it's improving. Already I'm sleeping at night. I hadn't slept properly and unbroken for years. I used to get woken up all the time. I had to shift position because I'd gotten sore. I'd wake up uncomfortable because I'd laid in the wrong position, and it ruled my life, and it's gone. And I didn't do anything. Nothing tangible in my life changed. It was God stepping in and performing the impossible for me. I know if you don't know God, that sounds crazy. I get it. But it's true. It's just true. And I want to tell you that that's the God you're dealing with. So much of the media and the cultural, so much of what you see has nothing to do with God. Nothing. People are using his name and doing the exact opposite of what he says. So that would be like, if you hate pumpkin and you're coming to dinner with me, we're going to go see somebody else. And they say, what should I fix? And I say, she loves pumpkin. And then you won't eat it. And then this other person, they're like, she's so rude. I know that's a ridiculous example, but honestly, that's what this is. So much of what you see has nothing to do with who God really is, what he really says, and how he really acts and interacts with people. He's tangible. He's powerful. The freedom that we're given, the free will that we're given, means we can ignore him if we want to. He will let us do that. But if you don't want to ignore him, if you're willing to be sure that he's real, if you want to know what the truth is about him, not my thoughts on him, not some other person's thoughts on him, you, yourself, your interaction with a supernatural God, if you want that, he will give that to you. That's the lie that this world is selling you. They're telling you that all we've got are these words on a page, and there's nothing tangible, and there's no evidence, and it's just people being sticklers for rules, and it's just an old-fashioned way of thinking, and they're just jerks, and they're just bigots, and they just want to hurt people, and they just want to control people. None of that has anything to do with who God is. None of it. If you want the truth, and I don't mean the truth that's comfortable for you or the truth that fits what I think, I mean the actual truth, God will show it to you. He promises that he will. And if you come to a place where you actually want a relationship with him, because here's the thing, You can go looking for the truth and he'll tell you the truth. He'll still give you the option whether or not to accept it. He's not going to force you into anything. He knows that real love is chosen. It's not a robot. It's not programming. It's not hypnosis. It is a relationship, and you choose to treat someone like they're special. So if you want to know the truth, God will show it to you, and then he'll give you the choice whether or not you'll enter into a relationship with him. And what he tells us about that is, if we want a relationship with him, all we have to do is acknowledge that we've done things we shouldn't have done. Acknowledge that there's something about this life that we messed up. Something about my life that I messed up. And that he sacrificed himself to pay the penalty. He stood up in front of the judge and said, I will go to prison for her. If I say, please do that for me, I enter into a relationship with God. And when I do, I receive God's presence, instruction, person, power, spirit inside me. And he helps me understand this crazy life. Because he knows things I don't know. He understands things I can't understand. He sees ahead and around corners I don't even know are coming. He'll tell me to do something now, and I'm like, why? That makes no sense. 3 weeks later, makes a lot of sense. He knew it was coming, and I didn't. God is a person. He's intelligent. He's active. He has a character. You can get to know him. You can get to where you recognize his voice. And more often than not, he's being vastly underestimated in this world. I adore him. He is the best relationship I have in my life, and I underestimated him. I can tell you that what you're seeing in media and movies, it's all just human crap. God doesn't need special hats. He doesn't need special rituals. He doesn't need special words. He only cares about what you really want and why. And if you really want the truth, he'll show it to you. And if you really want a relationship with him, he is ready and willing and waiting to have one with you. And if you really want your mind and your heart and your body and your soul, your consciousness, if you want that healed, because you got wounds from this world, he'll do that for you. He did it for me. And tell you what, this isn't the first time he's done a miracle for me. He healed me of life-threatening depression 14 years ago. And I've already talked to a lot of you about that. But that I couldn't prove. Every time I would tell people that, they would just be like, oh, well, you just changed your mind. You just started feeling better. And I'm like, what medical professional tells you you can just talk yourself out of depression? Clinically diagnosed depression. Gone. Never had it another day in my life. Not once. He did that for me 14 years ago, and I still underestimated him. Now he's done my body too. What will be next? I don't know, but I'll tell you when it happens. I know this is crazy. I know it's hard. I know it's out of the box, but I'm telling you it's real. And I want you to have it. I want you to have it. God's amazing. He loves the way we yearn to be loved. That's the truth. He loves in a way that fills you up and feeds the hunger and closes the wounds and heals them. The way he loves is the thing that you've been looking for from people, and it's never It's never happened, not for any length of time, not really, because we're all messed up, we're all broken. So I want you to know that he's real, he's true, and you don't need to talk to me. I'm happy to talk to you if you have questions, but you don't need me to find him. You just need to talk to him. But I'd say this to you. If what you're looking for is an affirmation of what you want God to be, if you're not asking a question, if you're kind of drawing a line and saying, I want to know that guy, you're not going to meet the real God. Because the real God, he is someone. And he wants to show you who he really is, not just who you want him to be. So, I guess what I would say is, if you want to be loved in that way, where you are wholly yourself, he's the one that can do it.